So as a little kid, I wanted to be Indiana Jones. I wanted to be wild and adventurous and travel around the world to find the next discovery and the next big thing.
Welcome to Hearts and Carts, the CPG podcast, the podcast about the people behind the products that are winning hearts and filling carts. This cast is for anyone with an interest in the world of consumer products. We're your hosts, Justin Osborne and Alex Hill, and our mission is to bring you weekly content that helps you be a better and more informed CPG professional. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Hearts and Carts. It's Alex here, your co-host. I'm here with Justin, and we are getting ready to learn about the mushroom kingdom. Justin, who are we going to be chatting with?
That's right. We are chatting with Julie Daoust, who is the Chief Scientific Officer at Mushroom Superfood and M2 Ingredients. I had the opportunity to work with Julie at Vega and just was always in awe of her ability to break down complex science issues and formulation issues into, layman's terms. So really excited to have her on the show and talk to us about the world of mushrooms, which is an ever-changing world. We'll move into the episode now, but please remember to like, subscribe, follow us on social media, give us those 5-star reviews, and stick around for the end of the interview where Alex and I will give you our major takeaways. Here we go.
Hey Julie.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. How you doing?
I'm good.
Man, it's been forever. I've missed you.
Yeah, I missed you too.
Yeah, how's life? It's funny, I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and it's like, you worked together until March 2019. I was like, March 2019? Holy crap, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
I guess so.
Feels like forever ago, but it also doesn't feel that long ago that we were hanging out working at Vega. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was good times. It was definitely a once in a lifetime experience.
Yeah. There are lots of things going on at the time. It was a cool place to be, but you've gone on and have done some exciting things as well, and you moved, and you're still in California?
Yeah, in Carlsbad, California, where it's almost always sunny.
That's all right. You lived in Squamish before that, if I remember correctly. So you've lived in some pretty beautiful places. I think California is an upgrade. It's one of the few places in the world that's an upgrade to BC, I think.
Yeah, and it's some people hate the rain, and I didn't really mind it, because with rain, snow, and skiing and mushrooms.
Yeah.
The more rain, mushrooms.
Yeah, that's true.
And so, but I moved to California, and for a while I just felt so hyper, and I'm like, what is going on? Like, I didn't really change my diet. I'm not really I'm like, oh, it's the sun.
Yeah. It's like, it's not like in the winter when it's dark here from 10 a.m. until like you get light for 3 hours. It's a little bit different, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
In the sun all the time.
Absolutely.
It's a super rainy, cloudy day right now. So I'm jealous of your son. But do you ever come up here anymore for work at all?
I was over there this summer. Went back east to Montreal to see my family for Christmas, and I'll be back for CHFA in April.
Awesome. Okay, there we go. Well, hopefully see you there then. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Feels like with COVID, all these people you worked with, you didn't get to see them in person for a long period of time. So it's a bit odd, right? And then
you were saying like whatever, almost 4 years, but then you think about it, like that's just mostly COVID.
Yeah. It's like that time period didn't exist. It's just like a cutout from time.
Very dilated time. So
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, let me introduce you, Julie. I'm really excited to have you on the show. I was, hyping up Alex before you came on. I said, I think she might be the smartest person I've ever met. And I truly mean that. I said, every time I chatted with her, she knew so much. She was talking about like regenerative organic farming and stuff. Like, I'd never heard of any of these things. So I'm really excited. Alex is very interested in the topic of mushrooms as well. So I was like, this is the person you want to talk to. Like, I'm guessing she knows everything. So on this show today, we have an old colleague of mine from Vega, Julie Daoust, on the show, and she is the Chief Scientific Officer at Mushroom Superfood and M2 Ingredients. Like I said, I got to work with her at Vega for a year and a half, a while ago now, and was just always amazed with her like ability to break down super complex formulas and ingredients and explain them to, dumb sales guys like me so that I could go sell them and be effective. And so always just learned so much from her. And as she's sort of progressed through her career, she's done some really exciting roles since Vega as well. So I'm excited to hear about those and all about her background. So I think with that, Julie, if we could just sort of go back to, young you, you spent a lot more time in school than most people. So maybe start there with, how you approach school and then starting off your career and then sort of bring us up to speed on where you are now.
Yeah. So as a little kid, I wanted to be Indiana Jones. I wanted to be wild and adventurous and travel around the world to find the next discovery and the next big thing. But Indiana Jones wasn't just an explorer. He was also a scholar. If you remember the series.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was just always really interested about the natural world around me, and I love learning more about it. So I love school, mostly the parts around biology and chemistry and kind of everything that explained the natural world. And then I started reading a lot about medicinal plants, and then I stumbled around a topic called ethnobotany, which is essentially a field of botany where you're looking at plants that have a human. So anything that we use, we covered in ethnobotany. It's like how we use it, how we affect that. And started kind of looking into that, started reading books, and came across a book by Richard Ivan Schultz called Plants of the Gods. And Schultz was essentially one of the major ethnobotanists in the United States. He was a student at Harvard and then ended up teaching at Harvard. And he single-handedly described the usage of peyote, ayahuasca, psilocybin, so magic mushroom, and work with Albert Hoffman on elucidation of the molecules that were in these plants. And not only that, so he didn't just do that, he also essentially affected the whole rubber industry during the Second World War. So we found some specific rubber tree out in the Amazon that were more productive, and they ended up being able to grow them elsewhere, like in the Philippines, I think, and Indonesia, and that changed the landscape over there. So this one person essentially blew up a bunch of fields, right? People started being interested in magic mushrooms because of him, into peyote and ayahuasca. So he kind of unlocked Pandora's box just by going around and being super interested in what different tribes and were doing with plants. And I thought that was so fascinating. He spent, like 20 years or so, don't quote me on that, but a long time in the Amazon, got malaria like a number of times and almost died. Just like a crazy time. And I just, was like, oh, I wish I could have been born in those days, although maybe I would have had to be born a man, maybe. But anyways, just to live, at that time in space where there was so much discovery out to get.
Yeah.
And so when I studied ethnobotany and then biology and got really into natural product chemistry, which is essentially the chemistry of plants and how you use plants for their chemistry. And the next frontier isn't the Amazon anymore. It's the marine environment. It's the deep ocean. It's all these different organisms that live in the ocean that don't really have a traditional use. No First Nation folks were using really a lot of these organisms for anything because they're either too or hard to find. So using modern techniques, we were looking at different labs. So that was really like a pharma track, but still with a hint of adventure and scuba diving to collect samples. So I was kind of Indiana Jones still of the ocean.
Underwater Jones.
Yeah, exactly. And pharma, everybody needs the pharma industry nowadays. Like there's a lot of good that comes out of that, but I'm a passionate person and I like to move and I like to see things happen. I want to talk to people. I want to get people using, the things I develop or I, participated in. And those timelines in pharma are just way too long. They're really political. And, it's a good business. They're doing a lot of good and other things less good, but like any other industry, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I turned to nutraceuticals, because not only could you empower people to impact their health with nutrition or different natural products, you could also develop products, test them and so on, and see them on the market a lot sooner. And that, that feeds my energy, makes me, so I started in the nutraceutical industry then, and I love it.
Love it. So you did a PhD before. Like, what was your PhD focused on?
So it was in natural product chemistry. So we were looking for drug leads, essentially.
Okay.
And we were the chemist looking into an organism to look for in chemistry. So for example, I studied sponges and nudibranchs a lot. And nudibranchs are like little sea slugs.
Yeah.
The word sea slug sounds gross, but if you Google it, they're beautiful organism, all kinds of colors and tentacles. And they're little soft bites. So the way they defend themselves in the sea is by producing toxic chemicals or really potent chemicals. And so they are little chemistry factory, and they develop really interesting molecules. And even if some of them are beautiful, and you pull them out of the water and smell them, and they'll smell like flowers or pine cones.
Interesting.
Aren't very tasty, but smell really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll see some of that. And so I was mainly focused on this type of organism. And we were partnering with a lab at UB that was studying autophagy. And autophagy, you hear a lot about it now in the context of like healthy aging and fasting and the Wim Hof method and all of that, right? Are all associated with that process. And essentially what it is, if you're eating all the time and living within the riches and have all kinds of resources, your body gets a little lazy. And instead of recycling materials that might be in your cell floating around, it just kind of uses new protein, fats, and things like that. And then cellular waste starts accumulating in the cell. And then as your DNA and RNA are replicating, then sometimes some things floating around get in between them and cause mutation. So, your body can handle some of those, but eventually, it can lead a mutation to cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, what have you. So all the diseases associated with aging. So that's why when you fast, your body will tend to recycle things, right? And there's other ways like cold water baths to a degree activate autophagy as well. And so it's a really important pathway, and it's really key in a bunch of. So we were working with a lab that was studying that and finding chemicals that could activate autophagy or deactivate it to understand it better. So I found a chemical that did that in a nudibranch. But then it turned out the nudibranch didn't make it. The sponge it was eating made it. And then it turned out it was a bacteria in the sponge that made it. Remember?
a couple layers under the microscope.
A couple layers.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, no, I know Justin mentioned I have an interest, and I don't know. My father-in-law is a doctor, so he turned me on to a book by a gentleman named David Sinclair called Lifespan.
Yeah,
I found
it's a great book. Very
super interesting. And then I randomly read another one called Eat to Beat Disease. So that one talked a lot about mushrooms. And then I've read Michael Pollan's book. So yeah, I was super excited for this call, just to hear and learn. So yeah, it's funny because when you guys sent me the questions, I kind of was like thinking about takeaways, and I thought about recommending that book. Actually, it's I think it's a very important piece of work that he's doing, and really timely. Like a lot of people are interested in that at the moment. Totally. I mean, I think the concept of shifting the idea of aging from being just a fact of life to being effectively a disease, and that entire mind shift is crazy. I'd never heard anyone talk like that about it, and I think approaching it scientifically and everything else that they're doing between his two labs is pretty cool.
Yeah, he's got a good thing going.
So you move out of your PhD and talk to us about hitting the ground in your career and what it was like joining companies and some of the taking, I'm assuming an academic environment was pretty different than landing in a commercial environment. So, what were some of the differences, and like how did you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, some people often question, the need to go to school for this long. And first off, it was really fun. And the second really important lesson it taught me is that really what they're trying to do while you're in grad school is that you don't know everything, and that you will be wrong. And if you're right today, maybe you will be wrong about the very same thing and not too long from. So it really teaches curiosity, even on things that you thought were, facts and could never, right? And it teaches you that, and it teaches you great modesty.
Yeah.
In the way you talk. And I think that there's no better field to have that skill set than the field of mushrooms today, because it is so vast and there's such complex organisms, and things are changing constantly. So I'm grateful for that lesson every day. Every day, but really in the mushroom field, it's even more. So I would say that was something that was really great coming out of grad school. Like I said, I'm a person of action, and sometimes, waiting for grants, kind of going through that grant cycle all the time, and, kind of not really being able to choose, like the university, you'll do your postdoc, like you can, but you don't know if they'll accept you. And then after the postdoc, like you get the professors, with other professors that you feel will inspire you. So I felt like going to industry, it was a lot more empowering to kind of be in charge of my own destiny. So that was a big plus.
For sure.
And then just being surrounded with people with so many other backgrounds, right? Because in a company like at Vega, I had the sales team, and I learned so much from them. And we had, the folks in QA, which were also scientists, but in, a different way, the operation effectiveness, like everything is just so rich. And not that a academic, mindset or ecosystem, if you will, wouldn't be. But it was great to, as a team that's so diverse, work together and put products out to market and delight consumers and, create great marketing that resonates with consumers. It was just so fulfilling, because you have this ragtag individual that gels together and puts a product. I love it.
Yeah, Vega was good for that, because prior to that I always worked for like American companies. I was working in the Canadian office. When we got to Vega, like it was 120 people maybe that were in that small building, right? And it's like every function was right there. So we are all like having lunch together, sitting together, going out for drinks together, chatting. Like everything was being done right there, from like the lab work to selling the product to marketing the product, the finance team, like everyone was sort of like working together, which was sort of cool. Such a small space. Like it was one floor, one small area. So you could learn a lot from the other functions pretty easily, which was really cool, I thought.
Yeah, experience.
And then, so after Vega, you went to Soylent. Tell us a little bit about that, because they're, I guess, sort of a competitor of Vega, but very different sort of stance on GMO, non-GMO, etc., right?
Yeah, and this was like, it fascinated me, because Soylent broke all the rules. So at Vega, we need to be as natural as we can, because short ingredient lists, and they can recognize plant-based, and Soylent was plant-based as well, but non-GMO and organic and so on. I mean, the intent of Vega was to provide plant-based nutrition to the most people possible, and wanted any plant-based nutrition, and kind of developed a definition, developed a definition of that. Soylent had a very similar mission. So the idea and the thesis behind it is to make eating as efficient as possible. So that means cost-wise, that means impact on the planet, that means nutrient density. So Vega was huge on nutrient density. So how can we fit the most nutrient in the smallest? And Soylent was the same. It's just the means to get there were very different. So at Soylent, that thesis essentially resulted in a plant-based product, because that was the most sustainable way to get there. And in the long run, that it would be the cheapest way, right? As animal farming becomes more and more expensive with less resources, soy is a very efficient crop, right? So there was a lot of similarities, but then the way to talk about the product, it was just like so in your face, like pro-GMO, and we don't want to eat. We just want to, have our nutrients and go on with our life. And I was like, I need to break down all these assumptions that I have in my head that every consumer is like me, right? And and just listen to people, and then come up with a product that will be good for them, right? That they'll like. And so that was great because the Vega consumer is a lot like I am, like my preferences and what I want. And so I was kind of sometimes, it's a commercial product, but I was like formulating for myself.
Yeah. Your own like personal biases and opinions and assumptions, right? For sure. I think we all do that in everyday life, right?
Yeah. And the consumer were feeding that to a degree, right? Because they were kind of saying the same thing back. But sometimes I question, like, am I really listening? Like, am I kind of dismissing some comments because I'm so like, I have blinders on? And so going to Soylent, which, fitted with my belief in plant-based diets and the fact that we need to include more plant-based meals and options in people's days, was there. But, I just had to completely remove the blinders and talk to people that either don't want to eat or can't eat because they've had, health problems and they can't digest anything. And Soylent worked for them, right? And so there was a lot of those. There was a lot of people that just didn't like to eat.
Interesting.
I wish I had that problem. Yeah. I have the exact opposite.
Yeah. And then people that just didn't have time, they're busy and they love having it kind of in their like mini fridge at work or in the lunchroom or whatever, right? And so that was a great experience in listening consumer. And then the other thing that was super fascinating about it was just digging into soy and all the like misleading information that's out there about soy, the fear of soy. Where's that coming from? What are the studies? Are they good studies? Are they bad studies? And I became a big fan of soy while working at Soylent. Yeah, it was fascinating.
So GMO, be scared or don't be scared?
I mean, you don't need to be scared of eating something that's GMO. I think there's just a question around industrial agriculture overall, which GMO supports in a way. And so, for example, with glyphosate, we're spraying a lot of glyphosate because of these non-GMO crop. And if you live in areas where that happens a lot, it's not good, right? And it affects people's quality of life and so forth. So, but eating something that's GMO, isn't going to make a difference in your life. I think it's more around.
It's like the byproducts.
Yeah, it's more around like encouraging such mass agriculture. And, by the way, GMO soy, most of it goes to animal, especially what's grown in the US. I think I don't have the numbers in front of me, but less than 10% of all soy grown in the US actually humans, and the rest goes. So is GMO the issue or is animal farming the issue?
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad guys in that equation, I think.
That's true.
So it's more of a question around industrialized agriculture for me and the lack of diversity there.
Got it.
Stemming from animal. But I think as a crop, soy is great. I mean, complete protein. It like soy protein, barely any aftertaste. I mean, to make products, plant-based products,
is great. Yeah,
it's great. The functionality is great. You can make like fibers with it to create plant-based meat. Super soluble. Like there's functionalized ones that are super soluble that can make a really nice base for a shake or plant-based milk. Like compared to other plant protein, it's so versatile and great. It's the victim of some really bad science. And also it's a poster child for industrial agriculture. That comes with a lot of problems.
Makes sense. Yeah, industrialized agriculture as well. I attended a conference with the Compost Council of Canada a few years ago, and they talked on your current job about
a compost conference.
Very random, I know. But they talked about regenerative soil and farming and how bad it is, specifically for the mycelia, and how that affects crop outputs and everything else, as well as carbon capture of like acreage and everything. So yeah, I've heard some scary stuff about industrialized farming and how it's hurting us, but I hadn't heard it from a GMO standpoint. Like my view on GMO had always been it probably isn't hurting us. Like I said to Justin, we were chatting before that, like, we've been genetically modifying slowly all of our animals and crops for thousands of years, but using CRISPR versus that, I don't know if it's that different, but it's an interesting topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at the heart of the issue is that it allows expansion of monoculture.
Yeah.
Right? And there's, resistant glyphosate now in some seeds, right? And you need more glyphosate. It's not really like a solution for the next couple.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so after Soylent, you went to Live Kindly. So tell us a little bit about Live Kindly.
Yeah, Live Kindly is a roll up, I guess. So there's of different brands from Europe and South Africa. And essentially the brainchild of a fellow that, I don't know if he started it or heavily involved in Blue Horizon, the fund, Switzerland, that funds a lot of, they only fund really plant-based brands or tech companies that are supporting the plant-based industry. And the vision is have all these different brands that could cover, different consumer. I have a media company with the Live, that's where the name comes from. There's a mailing page called Live Kindly Collective where you can get news about plant-based topics, various topics. And they had a lot of followers, great audience to pair the brands with that, and also with some ag tech assets as well, and essentially have like a fully vertically integrated company that could grow the crops, transform them, sell it to the various brands, and then educate consumers. So headquartered in Amsterdam.
Okay.
And some of the main brands that it had was a company called Like Meat, leader in plant-based meat. And then there was Fry's Foods, who's a company, Fry, out of South Africa. So a real pioneer in South Africa in plant-based meat and various plant-based meal options. And I was heading up their open innovation platform as well as the R&D for North America. And the open innovation platform was to identify different technologies that could help us deliver the best plant-based chicken there could be. So through the Like Meat acquisition, there was a lot of technology in high moisture and extreme. Create a slab that's moist of plant-based proteins. So it's water and a plant-based protein, and it creates all these fibers. And depending how you cut it and marinate it, it looks a lot like a fajita style.
Yeah.
And then you can cut those up or grind them to make chicken patties, like fried chicken patties, nugget, other things of that nature. And it's an interesting and newer technology. Before, all the vegan nuggets were made with what's called teef. It's essentially like a picture of shredded wheat.
Yeah.
Cereal, soak it in water and chicken flavor, and then fry it and batter it and fry it. That would be the technology. So texture vegetable protein, what everybody was like Gardein and so on and so forth. Their products are that. It's really small fiber. It might kind of taste like chicken, and for a nugget, maybe that's okay. But for a bigger burger, it's not quite the same. Like meat-like fiber. And so with high moisture extract, you could get big fiber that were much more. So we wanted to be the best in plant-based chicken. So I was looking for technology that we could acquire or partner to get better products.
Very cool. It's interesting because I think part of your skill sets, all of the, I guess it's like part of the ethnobotany aspect of it. Like, how does it affect people? How's the nutritional profile? What are the benefits? And you've talked about kind of just knowing that spectrum, but I guess another aspect of this whole thing is like engineering almost, right? At this point, like how do you engineer a piece of technology that's scalable, that can make something like you just described, like with the fibers that you desire and everything else, like the process engineering, all that stuff. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it was great, and it taught me a lot about patent law, what we could patent, what we couldn't, how you build a patent strategy, right? So I got to interact with really smart people around that, and created a patent strategy, the team there, and took some of that knowledge with me. Definitely very rich. Cool. And it was great to also I started working with them in fall of 2021, so all remote. I was living in Lake Tahoe, working with people in Germany, South Africa, New York. And then as we put together a plant in New York, and I had our extruders and everything come in during the pandemic, and flew over there to set it up during the pandemic. Everything was in lockdown and refused. It's crazy. Yeah. But super fun.
Very cool.
Very cool. Yeah. And then you moved, and where you are now, M2 Ingredients / Mushroom Superfood. Mike Fata mentioned the company quickly when we chatted with him, but I guess just to start, maybe you can explain sort of the differences between the two companies and what they do, and then I know Alex wants to ask a lot of questions about mushrooms after that.
Yeah, let's do it. So M2 Ingredient is the mothership. So M2 Ingredient is the original company. It was a B2B company, so an ingredient, specialty ingredient, essentially. So Steve Farrar and Carter, our founder, started the company together and saw an opportunity for functional mushroom powders that were grown in the US and organic and have a broad range. So they started the company and were selling really ingredients to other brands. One of their big breaks was Beachbody. Beachbody put some of their ingredients in Shakeology, so that helped kind of grow. But this was about 13 years ago. And mushrooms, some people knew about them. There was some products out there, but it was minimal. You also didn't see little mushroom trinkets everywhere you go like you do today. Like mushrooms were, people liked them, but it wasn't central to, the supplement aisle or anything like that. It was definitely very neat. And so Sandra, our founder, saw really a need for a brand that could help educate the consumer to showcase the mushrooms, make it approachable, find different applications for the product as well, get mushrooms out there. And he spent almost a year on the road, like knocking down everybody's door, trying to get the product in market, got a few regions of Whole Foods. And so the brand got started this way. And now Ohm is part of M2 Ingredients, but we still have our beach, which is M2 and Ohm. And so we have people on the team that really focus on one aspect and others.
Got it. And then your role there, what exactly do you do?
Oh, a bit of everything. So I've quite the title, Chief Scientific Officer. So essentially anything to do with science falls
You're the
within my
person?
team. Yeah.
That sounds about right. Yeah. Okay.
No, so we have under my team, we have QA, QC, so quality assurance, quality control, and regulatory, and R&D, and mycology.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you are spread out over all sort of areas. You're right. All areas of science. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do a lot of work on our brand. So in product development and finding new co-packers and that whole product side in collaboration with my marketing counterpart. On the M2 side, we're doing so much exciting stuff in mycology. We're doing clinical trials. So it's getting really and super interesting.
I was going to ask if you're like actively involved in claims formulation, or if that's something you guys look to the academic literature for.
I would say it's a bit of both. But we decided to invest in our own clinical trials. So there is currently a published clinical trial on one of our blend, which is mainly made up of cordyceps, and that's for a sport performance outcome that we got significant results on. And we are currently trials on a focus trial for lion's mane, which is our most popular mushroom, and also a stress and anxiety outcome trial for reishi.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, maybe and I know I said Alex could ask these questions, but just to kick off, maybe chat about about why someone would use some of these mushroom products, right? Like reishi or ashwagandha or lion's mane or any other things. Like what is sort of the power or the interest behind mushroom?
Yeah, so let's take a step back. Mushrooms are part of fungi. Fungi is a kingdom. If you think of plants and how many plants there are, fungi is a full kingdom of so much biodiversity, right? So we already have drugs in the market, like penicillin, for example, is from a mold. And so that's in the kingdom fungi. We have cyclosporin, which is a drug that's to prevent when you get an implant and to prevent rejection of the implant. So that drug is from a mushroom. So there's a lot of pharmacology that can be found in mushroom. And so in traditional medicine, specifically in Asia, so Japan and in China and Korea, medicinal mushrooms were used along with plant and so a lot of that knowledge really started there. So mushrooms like reishi, lion's mane, cordyceps were all used in traditional Chinese. So we find a lot of the more established species coming from that tradition. Now there's more new research that's coming out constantly about new molecules and new functionality for mushrooms. So that's also emerging now. I'm sure we'll see many more as the category. And when you think of, how does a consumer perceive mushrooms? Like let's say you walk into Whole Foods or in Costco or something and look at all the botanicals, like mushrooms are typically within that and aren't really any different, right? It's kind of classified as another functional ingredient, as another botanical. What's interesting about mushrooms from a grower's perspective is that if you develop a platform with favorable conditions, a lot of different in the same space, in the same way, and you can't do that. So, in terms of a food technology platform, it's really interesting world because shift with trends and adapt really quickly, just like the mushrooms do in the environment.
I gotta ask, you guys talking about The Last of Us at all at the office?
Oh my God, we're getting so many questions. Yeah. And we want to do a spoof too. Yeah. So we should, questions we've got contents coming out. I mean, if you look at Google Trends and the word cordyceps, it's just exploded.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
Yeah,
everyone's worried about
are going like that. Yeah, they're going like this, and then Last of Us, it's like, maybe we should.
No. It's I mean, I've seen like bits of the show, but I haven't sat down. I haven't had time to like actually sit down and watch it. But are you worried about cordyceps?
No, actually. No. I'm more joking. I
think if you're worried about mushrooms controlling your mind and you're scared of that, maybe worry a little bit more about magic.
That's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, I guess one place I'd want to go though is just from your end. I mean, you've named a few of them, but I know lion's mane, reishi, and cordyceps all have a lot of benefits, and that's probably why you guys are investing there for your own primary research. But if you were to choose a top choice, one or two, is that where you go? Like, I know shiitake also, they say has immune benefits and other benefits, cardiovascular, etc. Like, which mushrooms would you say are your preferred mushrooms, and why?
Yeah, I think one benefit of mushrooms that you find in really all of them is that their cell walls are made up of different things, but beta-glucans is one of the carbohydrate that makes up the structure, and that's true for the mycelium and the mushroom. What we call mushroom is typically the fruiting body. So fruiting body is what you think of, and then the mycelium is what looks like it's all one organism, and it's different than plants. For the purposes of this talk, let's keep it at that.
Yeah.
And in the mycelium and fruit body, you'll find beta-glucan. And you may have heard of beta-glucan in the context. They are an immunomodulator molecule, and so they'll help your body better fight infection. But they're not something that overstimulates the system that would cause, so it's not really working like cytokine pathway, really active macrophages. So it's a different pathway. And all mushrooms have that. So all mushrooms have an immune benefit to them, their content in beta-glucan. Some mushrooms may have more than others, but they all have it because it makes up part of them. So that's one benefit that you can kind of count on across the way. And, and sometimes consumers are like, well, how can all these mushrooms have immune benefits? Hogwash,
Yeah.
And no, it's because of the beta-glucan. That's, a really basic building block of the.
So I asked you to choose one, and you basically said, I don't want to choose a favorite child.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's see here. I love lion's mane, and I know it's it's everybody's favorite right now, but my day is one topic, will be how can we better clean the floors? And then the next topic is which candidates should we pick for a clinical trial, like which demographic? And then the next topic is, we can't detect cordycepin in the cordyceps using this method on a LCMS. Yeah. What do you think?
It flows nicely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Super logical, nice flow. Yeah.
So lion's mane has helped me to be in the moment and focus my full attention to the topic at hand, worrying about the next meeting.
I like it.
So personally, it helped me a lot. And there's a lot of really good science on lion's. But I think Cordyceps militaris is an amazing mushroom, and it's growing. It's got a lot of application in sport nutrition, and I think it's probably going to kind of overtake the.
Yeah, honestly, I hadn't I said, I've kind of been exposed to some of this stuff. I hadn't really heard much about cordyceps other than in The Last of Us. So yeah, that's one I'm going to have to read up on more. You guys have some sport products out now, or are they coming?
So we sell cordyceps. We actually grow two species, Cordyceps sinensis, and there's a lot of debate around, is it cordyceps, ophiocordyceps, and so you'll see it labeled in different ways, and that's maybe one podcast discussion. But mostly known as Cordyceps sinensis, which is the species that was used in traditional medicine in China. And then there's Cordyceps militaris, found in North America. And Cordyceps militaris is really interesting because it's easier to grow, and it also is a lot more cordycepin, which is the active molecule. Well, one of the active molecule, one of them. It's a beautiful mushroom. It's bright orange. It smells really good, and just fascinating life cycle as well. So these mushrooms are parasites on insects. In the wild, they're parasitic, and ants, the Last of Us.
Yeah,
right.
The ants.
Yeah, so they live in insects, and because of climate change, now they live in humans and control their. So that's a big jump from an evolution perspective, by the way. So
just a bit, yeah.
I think we got some time. Yeah, I don't think I'll be around for that one.
Yeah. A very efficient rollout on the entire planet as well. I don't know if things move quite that fast.
I live on an island. I'm fine.
Yeah,
so I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So anyways, we grow those two species, and this is just kudos to mycologists that have figured out growing techniques for these, because we are able to grow them on oats, so there's no insects involved in the process, although these mushrooms love protein and fats, so when we look we have to.
Interesting.
I think one of the questions I'd like to ask you, and maybe the answer is mushrooms and some of the areas of mushrooms you're looking at. And because you work there, maybe that's what you want to say, of course, but what are the major trends you're seeing in food and nutrition coming up? Because you, with such a strong science background and having worked at these companies, must have at least what you think is going to be the next big thing that's coming up. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah. I don't know how well it will transfer, but I really think there's something around aging, and not in the way that supplements were sold in the past, where aging was more, wrinkle cream, joint pain, things like that, but more around healthy aging. And collagen was kind of that, right? Young people were taking collagen to not get wrinkles or, not have joint pain. And that started there, but I see it. There's a lot more interest through the work that St. Clair's done, for example, David St. Clair, in how do you help your metabolism remain healthy for longer. And I don't know if I feel like consumers at large will get on board. It's been a couple years that I think it's up and coming and hasn't really taken off. There hasn't been a clear kind of brand that's really overtaking the market with concepts like this.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's coming. I mean, every single podcast you listen, what have you, is talking about those kinds of topics, right? And what can you take, and fasting, and so on and so forth, right? And it all kind of ties into that.
Yeah, I've been wondering if NMM or NMN is going to be a big next big thing. But when you look right now, there's not really any. I heard the pitch for it in that book, so to speak, and I haven't bought it because when I look, all the brands are kind of which one's the right one to buy? They're some of them are $60, some of them are 120. Is the $60 what is it?
I also, after I read the book, looked at the brands that were involved, and I'm like, oh my God. And I ordered some products to kind of check them out and test them. Oh my God, these products look so bad. What's in here?
Yeah.
See, there's a difference when you're a food scientist like yourself. You can actually order the product and test it. For me, it's like testing it. For me, it just means I'm just buying it and hoping
and eating it and seeing what happens. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Cool.
Well, that's good. When you figure that out, make sure you tell us whatever it is, so that Alex and I can stay on forever. That would be that would be lovely.
Possibly
raging terribly. So
I don't want to do any brand bashing on this podcast. So.
Exactly.
I'll text you after.
Exactly. Sounds good.
Julie, one question we like to ask people is just around time, really around time and priority management. You got a big job, lots of teams working under you on lots of different things, and just curious how you prioritize and manage your kind of days and weeks to get the absolute most out of them, and if you have any hacks or methodologies you'd care to share, we'd love it.
More lines, man, people.
It's funny. I was thinking that in my head when you said that. We're just talking about lines, man. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that, and let's see. I mean, I'm really old school. Like I have a huge day planner.
Very nice.
Like it.
I make a list of like, what are the two most impactful things? Just two things that are going to be most impactful. No matter
Love
how
that.
big my list is, those are the two things that I can't delay, right? And so that helps me set an intention of the week and ensure that despite the fires and so on, I always go back to that before I go back to my email or, something else, right? So that's been really helpful. And then I guess with time, just really trusting people on my team, and building that trust and trusting them. And they challenge me, I challenge them, and we keep each other honest that way. And that's helped a lot make it effective. I don't want to police people on my team and police their work, right? And they know that. And so it's like we all expect a really high quality of output from each other. And that really helps. I don't have too much time validate.
It's so true. I mean, like at the end of the day, if you're going to be validating, checking stuff, it's exhausting, right? Like you have all these smart people, let them do their thing and you can do yours. Also, I haven't heard many people say like as low a list as two things, but I like it because ultimately I think that like one of the biggest, when we talk about prioritization, like really prioritization is just reduction, right? Like there's endless list of things you could do. So I like that.
Yeah. I mean, some of these things involve a few different steps during the week, right?
But
it's just about
for sure.
Not losing track of like, what are the game-changing things? And that's why we set goals and, and put them in our strategic plans, et cetera, et cetera. But on the weekly basis, it's lose track of that.
You get sucked into firefighting, get sucked into your endless inbox. It's like a reminder of like, what were the impactful things I was supposed to be working on, I think makes perfect sense. Another question that we like to ask all our guests is, what is a product or brand out there that you love right now? It can be something in the space, something entirely different, just something you like to consume or use. Like, what is a product that you love?
I would have to say, and it's not a new brand by any means, Gaia Herbs.
Okay.
And I really like that brand because they really have invested in sustainability, but not just sustainability, cliche word that everybody uses when they, use recycled plastic at 5% in their they've grown sustainably. They've been around for a long time. They've had the same values essentially for a long time. And they have sustainable growing techniques, treat their employees really fairly. They are a B Corp. They're doing everything in a very, like, their play is long. So they're not out there for like a quick exit or anything like that. They have a long play, and that shows in their brand and their products. You can even like go on the bottle and there's a little code, and you go on their website and you type it in and you where the herb was grown and like when, and you can even see the COA, like the certificate of analysis. So the transparency is also insane for a supplement brand, right? Where often you don't know where, like we just talked about, you don't know where the product's been or what it's made out of. So I think it's done a lot for the category. I really respect them. They kind of remind me of Patagonia in a sense. They're a little higher price, but also going for short and fast. I really respect them.
Awesome. We'll have to check it out. Last question that we like to ask is, if you were talking to someone who was aspiring to get into this kind of nutraceuticals space or working with products in general, and you had to give them a little bit of advice, what would you be telling them?
It's a really small industry, even with big food, like, and globally, right? It's a very small industry and you'll run into people your whole career. So don't burn bridges. And what I mean by that is you can be opinionated, disagree with people, you can even argue with, but just don't be, be kind with them, I guess. And don't burn bridges. So, again, it doesn't need like you be soft on your opinions and stuff like that. You're just respectful. So that's the first piece of advice. And the second one is, just always make sure that whatever role you're getting, there's a hook. You're bought into the mission, and you also are meeting people that work there or hearing from them, and that you're going to be able to make friends there, because there's nothing more miserable than working in a place where you just can't get along. Like that, that the team gelling together to really get results is so motivating. It helps you get out of bed, and very important, very important.
Yeah,
I love it.
And it's great. Like the second piece of advice, like if you don't get that right, then you're bound to make the first piece of advice mistake. of burning a
Oh
bridge,
yeah.
right? Because if you go to a company that you're
Bridges.
not bought, yeah, if you're not bought into their mission and you don't like the people there, well, like inevitably you're gonna end up burning a bridge. So yeah, like those I think fit perfectly together. And you're right, it's like the industry is massive, and yet it's like if you look on your LinkedIn, you know somebody at like every single company, and then they know people at every single company, and then it gets super small really quick. And you know, I don't know how many times somebody's been interviewing somebody or something like that, and they just text me, "Hey, what do you think of this person? Or what do you think of this person?" Right? And so
Mhm.
it's like those quick interactions, and I'm sure it's happened with me before, and I don't know what the people have said. Hopefully, good things. But it's so incredibly important because really that's all you have in your career is like your reputation. So it's super important.
Mhm. Yeah, I was in a factory in the middle of the Netherlands, like in the middle of nowhere, not near Amsterdam. Well, kind of near because everything near there, but
Yeah.
in a small town. And yeah, I with a couple people, we have several people in common that we work with and
Yeah.
knew. So
Wow.
yeah,
It's like 2 or 3 degrees of separation.
yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, I mean, really appreciate the time, chatting with us and teaching us some new things. Like I
Yeah,
said,
this was like an exciting one for me. I've been looking forward to this. So I really appreciate you educating us and sharing and teaching about stuff we only know the tiniest bit about. So thank you.
Too bad we
And
didn't have more time to talk mushroom. We should have started there.
I
I
know
know,
we might have to do
I
we
know.
might have to bug you for a second episode, or at least go pick your brain at CHFA offline. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's I think we could have done a whole episode just about mushrooms, but we wanted to hear your career path because a lot of the people that we've met with are on the sales or marketing side, and it's great to meet the other side of the commercialization process and
Totally.
talk about those roles, right? Because it's part of the same company but completely different, and roles that Alex and I haven't done and don't know a lot about. So it's nice to hear that career story.
Great. Well, thank you
And
guys. Appreciate the time. I had fun.
thanks so much, Julie. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye.
Chat
Bye.
soon. Thanks again. Bye.
That was a super fun conversation. Super cool. You don't every day get to talk to kind of a bona fide true science expert like that about
Yeah.
like a
Doctor.
million
She's a
different.
doctor.
Yeah, she's a straight up she's a doctor, and like yeah, you don't get to ask those types of questions very often. So it was pretty cool. I really enjoyed that. What were some of your key takeaways?
Yeah, it's I love the very beginning, her talking about her want to be Indiana Jones, because that I thought that was so cool how that's like was her frame of reference as she's going through her career. It's just so interesting. And for me, it was just good catching up with her and seeing her. My biggest takeaway isn't a specific thing. I mean, her advice was great and she told us a lot of interesting science stuff, but my bigger takeaway is just her like general self. Like she is incredibly smart, super humble, super down to earth. And I just thought of, when I was working with her one time, a bunch of sales folks were going out for a beer at Steamworks, and she was there, and like, Julie, do you want to come? She said, absolutely, I want to come. So even though no one else in her function was going to be there, she came, hung out with us, chatted with us, learned about our jobs. She's just that type of person that wants to learn and is genuinely curious, and is just so easy to talk to and learn from. So it's not like a singular, this is what I got from the conversation, but I think just chatting with her reminded me of how incredible she is. What about you, Alex? I know that was your first time meeting her, so a bit different.
Yeah, I think one of the things that stood out to me, first of all, like I thought she was brilliant, and like I enjoyed the
She is,
conversation
yeah.
thoroughly, and it was really cool and just different to dive into some topics and some angles on products that we don't normally take. But one thing I observed and it's not, I would say, regurgitating her final advice, but it's the fact that her final advice was, I was like, if you're giving advice to somebody jumping into nutraceuticals and the food science space or products, and the first thing she came back with was all around relationships and people.
Yeah.
And the second thing she came back with, and that was externally focused. The second thing she came back with was relationships and people internally focused. And I think that is a sign of what a good leader does, is they consider all the humans involved, because at the end of the day, the products are made for humans by humans. So I think I liked that kind of focus, and I thought that was a testament to her as a leader.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. She could have got super specific into something science related, but it was all about the people and relationships, which it shows like we're different career paths, but a lot of similarities in terms of how you should approach your career and ways of working, which is just sort of cool.
A little more school to do that though.
Yeah, yeah, she's no shame in saying this. She's a lot smarter than me. I think it's clear to anyone listening, anyone that's met both of us, but yeah, she's incredibly smart. But that's why, it's amazing just chatting with her and learning from her. So it was really cool having her on.
Well, guys, thank you so much for sticking with us. Really appreciate everyone who's been following us on this Hearts and Carts journey. If you haven't already, please feel free to give us a review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Goes a long way for us. Also, if you haven't, follow us on social media, either LinkedIn or Instagram. And without anything else to add, we look forward to having you back next time for another great conversation.